you doing? Hi, Robert.
Hi.
Very glad to have you. I'd love to, if you wouldn't mind, with a little lead in. I kind of I was browsing through your project, saw a couple different interesting things. I think it was David that initially introduced us, but was reading through and really excited about what you guys are doing. We're really happy to have you here on the stream, and I appreciate you showing up. And I think it was a little bit last minute for you, but it's very exciting.
Yeah, we're happy to be here. So I'm in Switzerland, and we're trying to do a crypto project that bridges traditional finance and crypto. So it's pretty cool.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. Did you is this more of the interview format, or did you bring some slides? What do we got for today?
Well, it's last minute, so I don't have any slides actually. It's just me.
Okay, great. No, that's okay. I mean, I'd love.
Yeah, Dick said chat to these guys. They're really cool, really interesting. So I'm happy to do this however you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I have your site here. Double checking. It's the .ch, correct? Crescofin.ch. Great.
Yeah,
Got
that's
it
right.
pulled up there. All right. Would you mind telling me a little bit about? So you're trying to create a bridge between traditional finance and essentially what amounts to this new distributed world or decentralized world that everybody's going crazy about. I'm
Yeah,
sure you guys maybe. I'm sorry.
exactly. That's right. It's very simple. It's a very simple story. It's a bank alternative, and we offer people a higher rate of interest than they can get in the bank, and it's insured. And we do it through essentially building on crypto, building on blockchain. So we have a partnership with Aave and with Chainlink.
Wow, that's incredible. So you guys have the oracles, you have the some different type of pricing mechanisms built in there.
Yeah.
And do you guys use NFTs to create insurance? Talk to me a little bit about the tech underlying it.
Sure. So there's two sides to it. It's a matching model as opposed to a fractional reserve model that you get in traditional banking. So it's enabled by blockchain. On the one side, we have essentially proof of delivery, which is where we buy assets and they give a return, and it's 100% insured, and it's all recorded to chain. And then on the other side, we operate in fiat and in stable coins. So we take US dollars, euros, and Swiss francs. And we're also building a money market on top of Aave. And we're just developing actually our stablecoin offering in USDC and DAI.
Fantastic. And what? Okay. So actually, a couple questions here. Why Switzerland? Just you guys are there, or was it just the regulatory
Yeah.
structure? I guess I hear a lot of people, going to Switzerland. I'm a big fan of what they're doing, and it's a little bit clearer, I think, than the U.S. Just at the outset, is just the banking friendly, or the banking environment more friendly in Switzerland, or is it just that you're located there?
So it's both actually. So I live in Geneva. It's not a fake project where we were just shopping around for a jurisdiction. I've lived
Okay.
in Switzerland. I live in Switzerland. So the teams here
Nice.
in Switzerland, we're regulated in Switzerland. So it's a regulated company. We're like the first regulated company to offer real equity as tokens in crypto. So we just did that a couple weeks ago. And yeah, the Swiss regulatory framework is really great because it's very clear. It's very supportive of crypto. My regulator has a crypto specialist. I mean, when we talk about, hey, we're going to build like a regulated money market on top of Aave, he gets it. You know what I mean? Like, he knows Aave, he knows Chainlink. It's a breath of fresh air from most places in the world. It's a bit sad, in the UK and the United States, crypto regulation is kind of uncertain. But in Switzerland, it's been certain for quite a while. It's why you see the Ethereum Foundation here and lots of others. But we're really Swiss, so it's not just shopping around for a jurisdiction. So
Yeah, homegrown. Yeah, absolutely. I think I always touch on this point. I think it's a real shame that there's not the clarity that U.S. being one of the initial guys through the gate over here, and all this wonderful crypto innovation, to see them really take an unclear and an aggressively unclear stance, right? It's like the way that they end up creating ambiguity and having conflicting reports and opinions from different agencies becomes a struggle. And it's not even that you can't do it; it's just that you don't really know what you're supposed to do or not supposed to do. And if you talk to three different lawyers, it gets really gets messy. And it's a shame that we have a lot of people leaving and going other places. But it is a breath of fresh air that at least some countries are definitely getting it a little bit more right. So it's very promising to hear that a project like yours, like you mentioned, I think it's 1-to-1 equity with you saying you issued the token and it's 1-to-1 as far as the equity with the company and they're tied together. You have to like whitelist the wallets. Like how does that work? I'm a little bit curious, like what that looks like.
Well, you're absolutely right on the regulatory side of things. It's a bit of a shame, so much uncertainty. Because look at the United States; it's such a technology powerhouse. I mean, it should be just dominating the crypto space with lots of innovation. It should be adding a lot of value add to the financial industry, right? But finance in particular is so protected. I refer to it a bit as a guild, and it's got this moat around it, and that moat is that moat unfortunately is regulation. I mean, it's very good that like there's protection against scams, which you see a lot of, unfortunately, but at the same time it's really used to protect incumbents, and it really hurts innovation. So Switzerland happily is really different. I mean, Switzerland is almost like crypto itself. I mean, it's politically very decentralized. So there's not a very strong center. It's a confederation of different cantons or states. There's a huge element of direct democracy in the country. You can actually propose legislation and actually get it like written into law without going through politicians, which is shocking. And so it's always embraced like, it's always embraced. I know it's like it cuts out politicians, right? I mean, but
If only it were
it's
that
always,
easy.
yeah, well, Switzerland's historically always been like that, so it helps. But it means it's embraced crypto, it's embraced like Bitcoin. Like you can pay for like Bitcoin for lots of stuff here, including taxes. I mean, there's a great
Wow.
little Thai restaurant behind our office here in the old town in Geneva. And in this little Thai restaurant, you can pay with like Bitcoin, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash. I mean, it's really funny. So to answer your question, we've created equity tokens, and it's real equity. Like it's a real tokenized share in the company. It's like buying a share in Tesla or Apple or whatever, just in digital form. It corresponds exactly to Swiss law, so anybody can buy the share, just like anybody can buy a share of like Nestle on the stock market in Switzerland here, or you can buy it OTC like a P2P thing. And then to register your interest with the company, then you have to do like a KYC process, which is pretty simple. And then your wallet address becomes compliant. But it's actually a very simple process here in Switzerland. When I look around at like what's happening in the US, it's really puzzling because, well, the US has always puzzled me. I know it's supposed to be the United States, but from a finance perspective, it looks like 50 different states, all with their own regulatory structure. And I don't know.
Yeah.
We're fortunate. We're actually genuinely based here, and we're genuinely in Switzerland, and it's easier to do. But if you do see lots of people who are like, not Swiss. Like, I mean, even XRP and some others are, I don't know them really as a company, but they were thinking like they're going to leave the US and go to a better jurisdiction. So,
Yeah.
people are welcome in Switzerland.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it excites me. I think at the end of the day, a lot. I remember way back when Germany was setting up frameworks, and Europe like really just started going out in front of, hey, look, I get the revolution, I get this and all this stuff you guys are trying to do, but like, hey, look, we're not going to kill you. We're going to make it a little bit easier for you guys to try and figure out how to, I guess, bridge the gap with the existing system. And the funny thing is, there are definitely companies within crypto that I don't think I don't know if you'd call them companies or decentralized organizations that don't fit the mold in any way, shape, or form in any country, right? And this is something I've talked to lawyers about. This is something I've talked to like so many people, and it's definitely above my pay grade. I'm a technologist. I program. I do all this other stuff, and I have these business insights, and I've run companies, but it really comes down to if I'm trying to innovate, or if my team's trying to innovate, or if we're trying to do something. 90% of the time, it's not what do we have the capabilities to do, right? We have tons of capabilities. It's how do you do it and not end up in some kind of trouble you never intended to be in the first place. And that isn't that fear is overriding. At least in well, in the US at least, it becomes very political and draconian, especially like you're saying, with so many different parties and so many different states, and it's unclear, like, is this federal, is this statewide? I think there's advantages to having the protections of the states in a certain way. But when it comes to financial law and everything like that, where they seem to have imposed certain organizations on everybody, and then those ones that are supposed to be seeing it don't necessarily come up with some kind of standard, it becomes a big problem. And this is in many areas in U.S. politics, not necessarily just financial. Like this becomes an ongoing basis of whether you name it, bringing milk that's unpasteurized across the state line, becomes like a really tricky thing for some. I've never, my friend is like, very crazy, political, whatever. And he's like bringing milk across the state line somewhere. I'm like, why? That's illegal. He's like, yeah, you can't take it across. And I was like, what? I don't know the details on that. I'm just saying that was a goofy instance that I thought was particularly odd, because in Switzerland, I mean, I'm sure you can just, take your milk wherever you want it. But like here, apparently it's a big thing. You got the Dairy Farmers Association. You got these people. It's very, very special interest oriented over here, I think.
Yeah, and of course I didn't mean to get into US politics, because
No.
I have this aversion to to politics in general, but particularly
Yeah.
US politics. And one of the nicest things about living in, Switzerland is that you don't have this 24/7 news thing, like right, left, just being bombarded with politics. Well, honestly, it frees up mind space for like coding, for
Yep.
mountain climbing, poetry, whatever else. It's like, you know, the great thing
I
about Switzerland is it's been safe and stable for like centuries and centuries. And to be honest with you, I have no idea who's running the place, and they're doing a great job. I hope they keep it up. I don't
yeah,
need to
yeah.
really think about it that much. So
Yeah, and just to touch on it, we'll shift off the topic. I think it's more about just regulation clarity. It's not necessarily about I don't care what anybody is doing or whatever. I'm just saying in general, it becomes confusing is the whole point, and I'd like to see
yeah,
clear things. So I guess
no,
let's
but you're
touch
you're
on.
absolutely right.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say you're absolutely right. Like the most important thing for innovation is you have to have clarity, right? So like it's hard to innovate when you just don't know if you're like breaking the law, or if you can or can't do something. So well, one of the really nice things about building here in Switzerland is it's just very clear, and it's just like, it's a finance business. Like it's an open finance or a DeFi or whatever you want to call it. And so people actually will think of sending their money to Switzerland, right? Because it's a home to like a huge amount of the world's wealth. I mean, it's a reference country for that. Whereas you wouldn't necessarily send your money to, lots of other countries in the world. So it's kind of nice that the crypto regulation is really clear. And like, for finance, it's an ideal home for like a crypto finance company. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm looking at more and more into what you're doing on your site here, and I think the best way to describe it is that bridge, right, that you're talking about in the beginning, right? So I always use the example of like my family members, my dad, when I first got into crypto, he's like, "Oh, what's this? Like, don't seems interesting, whatever." Like uncomfortable. We eventually got him into it, and he started to get it. But I think there is this leap that is required where you've been conditioned and familiar with traditional finance models, and you want to participate maybe in these newer things, right? And I think this is where you guys are really you know focusing on, from what I'm seeing on your site and everything else that you've said, is that you have these traditionally insured assets or bank accounts, however you guys do it, right? And I'm probably missing a lot there, but then you're getting the benefit of some of these DeFi platforms and everything else that are correlated one to one in a traditional model where hey, look, if something happens, the money's still underneath and underlying and protected and everything else. Is that really what you guys are going for?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, at the back end, we're built on a blockchain tech stack. That's the new tech stack. That's going to replace the old legacy banking model. It's just a question of time. Like if you give somebody like a taste test between like their, current, banking model at like whatever, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, whatever, and how they could operate in DeFi or crypto, 99 out of 100, they're going to choose like the ease, the convenience of what you've got with crypto. What we're trying to do really is the front end stuff as well, not just the tech back end. So we're in crypto, we're not very good at talking about like the real benefits for users. I mean, we talk about it in general terms, but look, with us, it's very simple. Finance is about risk and return. We offer 3% in US dollars. It's 100% insured. Whether you put like, $50 with us or $50 million. I mean, it's all completely insured, and it's insured by Lloyd's of London. So, people can go into all the details of how that works, but basically it's a bank alternative. It's an insured savings account, and it's only made possible by crypto. So we do it in fiat at the moment, and we're developing in stable coins, and we're building a market, like a money market on top of Aave. And it really started because my partner and I, who's like this old friend of mine, PhD in structural engineering, we're here in Switzerland, and we make nothing with our money in the bank. In fact, in Switzerland, rates have gone negative. And so we're just so annoyed by it. We just thought like, how can we build something better? So we just built it initially for ourselves. I mean, we weren't actually thinking of building a company. We were just kind of pissed off and wanted our money to work harder for us, So, and anybody who does that, anybody who wants a better deal from banking, any thinking person ends up in crypto pretty quickly. And then the company just kind of grew from there. People kind of said, well, hey, like I wouldn't mind, bypassing the bank and getting a great rate of return as well. So that's kind of how it started.
Wow, that's phenomenal. I'm glad to hear that you guys are using blockchain technology, and it seems like in the most way possible. Like that's where you guys started. That was the foundation, right? What I'd like to talk about maybe is a little bit about you, Robert, and kind of like what this is always the most interesting questions, like why crypto, why'd you get into it? Sounds like you have finance background, very very specific and focused in that kind of area. You have a good mind for that type of thing. So where did you start? Give me a little bit of background on you, and then maybe some of the experiences that led you into crypto and how you found it.
Sure, I'm happy to tell you about myself, but as advance warning, like our product is boring, like it's a insured, savings account. I'm pretty boring. It's in Switzerland. Switzerland's boring. Like it's really trying to be that money Lego that is at the base of like banking to compete with savings accounts. So
Sure.
my my journey in crypto started when I was a banker. So I was a young investment banker. I just finished my master's degree in London, and I was working in Moscow, in Russia, which is a long way from home. And
This doesn't sound boring to anybody in the U.S., by the way. Right now, you're like
well,
you're London, now you're Moscow. I'm just saying. Go ahead.
well, yeah, those places are interesting. I'm not, but anyway, I'm like we're making a loan to like a Russian company. So I'm working for a large global investment bank, and we're making this loan to this Russian company, and say the loan had a value of like 100.
Hmm.
Well, in our subsidiary in Russia, we had a value of like 5. So I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm like curious. I did, I studied economics and finance. I'm like, where does this money come from? So I keep asking around. I'm like, does it come from the headquarters in London? Does it go through the Russian central bank? And like finally the treasurer's like, he's annoyed, and he's like, listen, kid, I create this loan account for 100, and that's for the, that's what the borrower is going to get. And that's our asset basically for the bank. And then, I create a deposit account, and I type in the loan amount, like 100 in this deposit account, and then they can access it. I'm like, you're kidding. Like basically you can just create money. Like the bank can just create money out of like, it's
Yeah.
based on its reputation, confidence in the bank, whatever, but they have this godlike power to create money. It's just amazing. I mean, it was shocking for like some young guy who like kind of like had been taught that banks, match or they allocate like savings to productive uses in the real economy, or they access like central bank funds. I mean, it was pretty amazing to see it. So, and that was a long time ago. And then, fast forward, I came across Bitcoin, and this young guy was showing me Bitcoin. It was the last time it was at all-time highs. And I was like, the guy who's like trying to sell me on Bitcoin, like in his wallet, he had like a Swiss lottery ticket. And I'm like, oh, this just sounds scammy, and Bitcoin sounds, it sounds ridiculous. And then I stopped and I thought to myself, I'm like, no, 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 it's more traditional finance that's, scammy and like untrue. And so, I had always been thinking, what is money? So kind of with Bitcoin, I got my answer of what is really true, honest money. And then, here in Switzerland, we're looking, like I said, we're looking for a way to make our money work harder for us, to basically cut out the bank, and we do that by building on a blockchain tech stack. Which once you cut out the bank, then you're not making like zero basically, or very little on your savings. You actually can make like a really decent amount. So yeah, so that's kind of my journey into crypto. And once you're exposed to crypto, like as a traditional banker, you're just blown away by the potential. Like it's like seeing the internet in the very earliest days. I mean, there's just so much we can't even imagine. Like we just, it's like Amazon in 1997 when it went public. Like you can kind of see it competing with like booksellers. Maybe it sells some other stuff, but you don't logically jump, back in 1997, you don't jump to like, well, maybe there'll be Amazon Prime, or maybe there'll be Amazon Web Services. I mean, I think the adoption we're going to see in crypto is going to be, mind blowing. It's going to be, very similar to like what we saw with the internet. So
And compared to when I joined this space, Robert, back in the day where, it was, to talk to somebody from a finance background now to say that, and what I saw, in the early days, not coming from finance, but having, I guess, like common sense and sound principles that like, hey, look, this is my dollar, and people are printing more dollars every day. Like, where does that money go? And, the bank's creating money, and, they're doing all this, lending, and coming off the crash in 2008. So I come from a smaller town
mhm.
in upstate New York called Buffalo. I don't know if you're familiar with it. But I
Sure.
remember, I was in school back then in 2008, I was in high school. And, it's a very working class place. And the interesting component of that was, I remember the stock market crashed, and there was pictures of people like camping out, and, and everywhere, like everybody had a really bad time, and all these banks are going on. These people are crying. They walk out of the door of the bank and they step into a Mercedes. And I don't know if you know Buffalo at all, but it's like it's 20 years behind everything else usually, right? Like the cars are 20 years old. Like everything's just a little bit older. It's a wonderful place, bunch of nice people. But I remember the sentiment being in the classroom. It was like,
Mhm.
who the hell owns stocks? Like that's how working class it was. I think the median income in that town at that time was like 15,000 a year, in the city of Buffalo, which is like ridiculous. And we were watching all these bankers and hotshots, and they're like, "Oh, I'm ruined." It's like, but what does ruin mean for the comparative? Like, it was just such a disparity, and everybody started laughing about the stocks, and it was like horrible. It's a bad environment. But I think that this disparity, even within the U.S.
Mhm.
or like other places, like what finance, banking, and access to capital, and all these things that they do, and creating money and all this stuff was really foreign to me. And that really like had a couple years in college, wrote a couple papers, whatever, started thinking about it, and was always a developer. When I first like encountered blockchain technology and Bitcoin and what it was doing, the way I rationalized it was really, and I think what your model is going for is look, you had the old music industry, which was, selling records out of stores, and everybody went to this, $20 a pop. And then all of a sudden, something like Napster came out, and everybody got their things for free. They got a bunch of viruses, and it was kind of touch and go, but you can still get the music for free. And the music industry ended up being completely upended. And eventually, there was a middle ground that was reached, and that's something like Spotify, Apple Music, like all these wonderful products that we have today, where the consumer and the these distributors and all this whole model has been shifted, where now you get to listen to all your music, you pay a little fee, it's a win-win. There's a lot of competitors in the space. I don't know what the effect is on the individual music creator or anything like that. Maybe they're not as big time as they used to be, but I think it's reached a better equilibrium in the music space than it was before. And what I'm starting to see with banking, and I'm not the biggest Ripple guy in the world, but I will say I like the innovation. I like where people are going. I understand the need for centralized models and decentralized models in some aspects. I think I have this ideological dream, but by the same token, I think that people also need. We have a lot of traditional mindset people that need this kind of reinforcement and all these other things, and they're not going to go as hard, crypto as I went. And I don't think there's any ever hope for them to go holding their own wallets, being hyper paranoid, writing them down on a piece of paper, sticking them all over the room and stuff. I think that they're looking for some kind of custodial solution in some cases. Maybe they will dabble in the non-custodial front, but I do think they want their money to work for them, like you're saying. They do want to be able to call somebody and interact with an actual human and understand that there's somebody working for them. And maybe some of this traditional type model where you get these types of insurance measures and things like that on your investment, so you understand what's happening. Now, what I'd like to kind of move into too is you mentioned you guys are 100% live, or you're not there yet. You're kind of tuning up some things. Where are you at?
Yeah. Well, let's start with Buffalo. I grew up. My partner and I grew. I know Buffalo. My partner and I grew up in a small town in Ontario, across the border. Now I live in Switzerland now, but yeah. So I've actually been to a Buffalo Bills game, and
Nice.
the Sabres and whatever. So and then I went to high school in Toronto. I went through the same system that Vitalik from Ethereum went through. And
Sure.
so, basically our product is designed for people, from Buffalo, right? It's designed for people to help make their money work harder for them. I mean, this is something where whether you're from whatever background you're from, everybody gets the same deal. It's 3% and it's 100% insured. And you know what? There's lots of small people you can imagine from places like Buffalo, but to countries in South America, Asia, whatever. I mean, people are looking to, make their money work harder for them. And that's 100% what we do. That's why we created the company. Well, we created initially for ourselves, but then we thought everybody deserves an opportunity essentially to have this new model, which is enabled by blockchain, right? So, it's kind of funny because in Switzerland here we've started with institutions to answer your question. So we're live in the in the fiat space, essentially testing it with institutions. And so we have a decent amount of depositors, and you'll be shocked. It's not just people from middle America who want their money to work harder for them. I mean, private offices, asset managers in Switzerland, they get the same bad deal as the rest of us, right? I mean, it's just commercial banks that it's commercial. It's the model of commercial banking that is not so great, I don't think, for the economy and humanity. I mean, I actually wrote a book called 1%, which gets into the technical details of fractional reserve banking and how the whole fractional reserve model is like an inverted house of cards, and it causes economic damage every decade or two, and it just channels wealth from the 99% to the 1%. It's a really, really boring book. It's a technical look at why fractional reserve banking just isn't that great. And so our model, which has only been possible recently with blockchain, right? I mean, only you talk about the music industry. being upended by the internet. Well, blockchain will do the same to exactly the same to the finance industry. I mean, I have
Even
no
more,
doubt.
even more so, it's the exact same technology, which people is what people forget. The peer-to-peer technology that was used in things like BitTorrent and everything else are literally these it's this traditional path of distributed computing, peer-to-peer type transactions. If I'm actually amazed that we didn't get blockchain sooner, just because of the 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 similarities between the technologies. It literally is the same tech. In a lot of ways, I think you talk about BitTorrent or uTorrent and all these other torrent platforms and like how they operate. And then if you look at blockchain and what was added to it, it was just Satoshi Nakamoto, going back to it, just looking at it from a high level and combining a couple key components, which is distributed network, some kind of token system, value reward, the mining aspect, which was a little bit newer, and then this decentralized ledger, which essentially is what banks whole value prop is. Hey, look, I have ledger, you have this much, I'm holding it. It's really interesting. I'd like to pull up your book for a second for everybody. I'm going to share my screen here. Let me see if I can add it in. Justin,
I only mention it because you brought up kind of inequality, and that's
yeah,
the thing
but
behind it.
it's
But
the
you know, you're
1%. The book
yeah,
that
it's
the
on.
financial establishment doesn't want you to read, right here, in case anybody's curious about that.
Yeah,
You can
that's right.
pull it back down, Justin. There,
That's right.
yeah.
But you know
So,
what you mentioned about the innovation between blockchain and the internet is exactly right. I mean, but the big thing for money, of course, is solving the double spend issue. And
mhm.
the traditional financial system, as I saw as a young banker in Moscow, is totally based on double spend or more than double spend, end spend or whatever. Whereas, like the premise behind crypto is that you can't double spend, and that is revolutionary. And when you apply that, like what we're doing is we're actually applying that in the real world. We're a bridge between the real economy and crypto. You cut out the banks. You can give savers 3%. I mean, and it's 100% insured. I mean, it's designed for mass adoption. It's not designed for somebody who has to do all of the complex things about crypto. Like the front end is like a bank account. I mean, it's exactly the same as depositing your money in a bank. We're based in Switzerland. We're regulated. It's open for anybody anywhere in the world. I mean, it will be, I should say, because we're still
Yeah,
testing at the moment. But yeah, the idea is that it's the first real technology challenger to core banking. I mean, I wrote an article about it in the Defiant newsletter. Cami Rousseau's newsletter, and it's basically like, in 1994, Bill Gates said banks are dinosaurs. But it's really irritating because they don't go extinct. I mean, they seem to be just fine, ups and downs along the road, but they're not displaced like the music industry is, right? And the real reason they're not, displaced is because of insurance, we think. So our model is basically matched funding plus blockchain technology plus insurance. And with that, you actually have people that can it neutralizes banks' psychological advantage, which is a feeling of safety. And so because people aren't going to have their salary paid into compound or something like that, right? You're not going to you don't put your life savings into farming yams or something. So what this is really, well,
if you're 20,
this
if
is
you're 20, you
really
probably do. If you're 40, you probably don't, right?
well, maybe, yeah, maybe. I mean, but this is really designed to. This is really the first company that's attacking core deposit banking. It's a $60.5 trillion industry. It's just enormous. I mean, we want to be basically the bank for people, whether you're in Argentina or China or the States or whatever. You could be an institution, you could be like an individual. This is like a very simple product, totally enabled by blockchain, right? And I mean, it's also a huge benefit that we're based in Switzerland, which is safe and stable and has really clear crypto regulations. So
Absolutely. And are you guys going to be implementing something like, traditional payment method, like a debit card, something like this into the bank, and stuff like that,
Yeah.
I would assume. Okay, great.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah. So we have a lot of great partnerships. We haven't announced all the details yet, but yeah, we have a partnership with a major card company. We have partnerships on the crypto side with Aave and Chainlink.
mhm.
We have a partnership obviously with the Lloyd's insurance market, who does all of our insurance, regulated here in Switzerland. And you know, what we're doing now is we're basically testing it kind of at institutional grade with mainly with family offices here in Switzerland, because they've been the early adopters, because they act as principals. They see the huge benefit, I think, of crypto. And but they're also like, they're really reassured when there's insurance in place. Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's just like, it's hard to get somebody to trust the technology. But so what we did is basically we got Lloyd's to look at it first. We got the insurance company to look at it first. They've done a deep analysis of everything we do, and like the the end result is that you can look at all the tech. I mean, that's fine. It's quite open, but at the end of the day, it's insured. So our plan is to really roll out next year. So it's to roll out to individuals. We've got some like great guys on the board of advisors, and we did a token offering, which is, I don't understand token offerings, to be honest. I mean, we did we did an equity token. So it's just one-to-one matched shares in the Swiss company, and we're really
Yep.
trying to build a community of early believers. It's like buying a share in like Tesla or something like that. We hope
Sure.
in the early days. There's nothing else the token does. It doesn't have utility. It just is linked to cash flows from the company. And what we're really trying to do is to develop a community who can see the potential of like this kind of like crypto product, but also also in the real world. And like we want people to help us with the retail rollout, which is going to come the middle of next year. We're going to start selectively rolling out basically you
Blockchain
know
center.
uh,
Um,
yeah, but
sorry.
yeah, yeah, but exactly. But the idea, but we're looking. This is why blockchain center is so great, because we need people to educate. I mean, anything that's done in a new space, it needs so much education, and so that's why blockchain center is so useful, right? I mean, it's like you know for mass adoption, people need to be informed. Like, you get that adoption curve that you got with like the internet. The nice thing about finance is it's really about risk and return. So if you can offer 3% gets people out of bed, having it insured gives them reassurance, and then the tech back end is just what enables it, right? So
I love that your video, which they're playing right now, says banks suck. I will say that. I think it's in keeping with you know what I listen, everybody, everybody basically that's a human uses a bank, right? In some capacity, and that's our relationship with our money. And the relationship isn't directly with the money; it's with somebody else before you get to the money, right? Before you do anything, you have to go straight through them, and like almost every country across the world. Now, one of the freeing parts about crypto is you have this ability now, that's been thrust upon you to do whatever you like, and nobody can tell you what you can or can't do. It comes with consequences in some aspects, but I do believe that the benefits far outweigh the consequences. And in a lot of ways, I do still think that we're headed down a path like you were saying. It's the market is prime for disruption. Disruption means opportunity for people like you to really capitalize on it, provide a good product and service, and that's the ultimate dream of crypto, right? Is that we have different models that work better. We have new entrepreneurs step into the space. We have new innovation. We have a more accessible marketplace for all these other things. We have the traditional benefits, where they're leveraged. So hybridizing some of these bank models and leveraging blockchain to its fullest extent to even like offset automation, like or accounting costs, all these other things, they're on the blockchain. And this is something that, like, I try to preach. I'm like, look at, I think it was like Antonopoulos, and he used to say, it's a huge, slow database. That's not the case. It's a hyper redundant database. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. It backs up everywhere better than anything ever before. You can trust it. You can trust in literally mathematics as opposed to people. And not to mention, you can go back and see everything that ever happened. Everybody, you can follow it. It's a phenomenal technology. And I think that the banks, they have a cost of change that is so significantly high for them to implement would cost manpower, time, effort, energy, rather than somebody starting over and kind of looking at, hey, like let's take some of the good parts, let's leave out some of the bad parts, and let's see what we can build and come up with. And it also puts you on a path too. Like say someday in a dream world, we have everything decentralized. We have all these insurance policies decentralized. We have everything decentralized. You guys have that ability because of the modularity and what you're doing with a foundational blockchain space to be able to eventually, if this is something you wanted to do, and I don't know, but it does position your company to be able to be more nimble with the current landscape, right? So, you can't talk about 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road of what's going to come out in blockchain. But I do believe that companies like yours are much better positioned to take advantage of different things that we haven't even thought of yet, right? Because you have this foundational base of blockchain. So that really excites me. And I just wanted to say that as well.
I think that's right. I think the fact that you can transfer value to somebody today on the blockchain without going through a centralized entity, I think that's hard to overstate the potential of that. Like I really genuinely believe that blockchain based finance companies or protocols, but like ours, things built on the blockchain will replace the current like black box in-house database. It'll just be swept aside. Like it won't be there in 10 years. So we have big ambitions though. Like our ambition is to be bigger than the biggest bank in the world. I mean, once we start scaling next year, I mean, we're really building this to take over like, a huge percentage of like the basic savings banking accounts that exist in the world, and we can do that on chain, and we can do that in fiat, and we're going to provide a bridge between the two of them.
Yeah, and I will I will definitely touch on look at Switzerland's great and everything, but I'm a born and bred American, so I really hope that we come up with a competitor to you. Not in a bad way, but I'm hoping that or that you guys come into the U.S. in some capacity because we need innovation in the space. I'm not like rooting against you. I'm just saying, I wish, the way I look at the U.S. is like we could really, take advantage of a lot of stuff. And if your company could come in here and operate clear, obviously you already have a plan to, but I'm saying it would be really nice to have, some of our talent going into efforts like this and resources like this, just touching on what we talked about previously, because tried and true, I think this is a wonderful country. We have tons of innovation. People from all over the world come here, and I'd love to leverage some of that and put it into, some of these newer models. Like this is just phenomenal. I mean, blockchain's phenomenal. Everything's phenomenal, but I do like the path you're taking for a lot of reasons, because at the end of the day, one of the things that I always say is blockchain's really not going to be everything it can be until it becomes really boring, like you were saying earlier, right? Boring is and sometimes it's good because you don't have unexpected situations that arise, right? Like nobody talks about the plastic cup that I'm drinking out of. Like the plastic that was designed was a huge deal back in the 50s. The throwaway lifestyle. They had all these ads about how wonderful plastic was. Now we overdid the plastic thing. I think it's hurting the environment. And we can, but the technological innovation that went into it and the way that people talked about it, they talked about plastic being everywhere and how big of a deal it is. They talk about graphene this way. A lot of these technological innovations, but it's not until they become really boring and that you take them for granted of how incredible they are that they really become adopted, because you don't have to know anything about it if it just works and it's trustable and everybody or trustless rather, and everybody just puts it in. They use it. They can be reassured that there's been a lot of work done on it, and humanity really gets the tangible benefit out of it. So it's going to be interesting to see, when the blockchain center sounds like the plastic center to people. It's like, oh, it's just plastic. But I think
That's
that there's
funny.
there's a good model, and I think touching on your point too, I think we're on the other end of that. The blockchain center. We're not necessarily trying to be a bank. What we're trying to be isn't even a financial center. It's like a resource center and onboarding point, right? And the way that we try to work with companies like yours is to kind of bridge this human gap, because we have all these digital companies and people show up, they don't know anything. I did a small segment for a client of mine on something a while back, and we walked through Times Square and we were asking about Bitcoin. And this is when I thought everybody knew about Bitcoin, right, or heard about it. I could do that today, and I promise you that even with all the news and everything else, we're in such a small environment here in blockchain. It's a very small world. I mean, I run into people all the time, but when I pull out of that and I talk to normal people, I mean, I live, breathe, eat, sleep blockchain. I love it. Try to make my life as much as I can. But when we pull out of that, we're talking about, the average retail consumer of, banking products, and, the average retail investor, or the average retail whatever. Joe the plumber, as they used to say back in the day, right? Joe the
Yeah.
plumber, he can get benefit out of this, and we have to make it as simple as possible for him to use it. And family shops is a great model because you can learn and work with partners like you guys are doing, and you can work out some kinks, and they understand a lot of times. Like, hey, look, 30 minutes, oh, we have a little bug or whatever, not that that happened, but I'm just saying there's a lot of give and take, and you can really perfect the model and prepare it for the scalability that you want to hit. And when you get it to a point where you think it's all right, and you have the process for even like bugs, errors, customer service, like you try to figure these things out on a small scale, and then figure out, okay, if I was going to do this 100 times or 1,000 times more or 1,000,000 times more a day, what does that path look like, right? That's a responsible outlook and a sustainable business model. And I think that that's actually lacking in crypto. We have a lot of brilliant people, uh, and some of the things I noticed is that, for all these wonderful projects, the sustainability of a lot of them long term is somewhat bleak, because they don't have sales teams, they don't have a management structure that is working towards pushing this out. So I think one of our goals, as the blockchain center, is get the awareness out, but also have trained people. Like, you go into Best Buy, you got to learn how to use your phone. Somebody walks you through something. They teach you how to do it, and then you can teach others. But also, that we have an aggressive outreach strategy, and that we're being inclusive. And this goes back to our days as a Bitcoin center. Nick started the Bitcoin center, and that's I think it became, how do we become a little bit more agnostic to our approach in blockchain, and how do we include some of these people doing wonderful things, whether that's centralized, decentralized, DeFi, CeFi, whatever you want to throw in that bucket. But it's important to us that we have trained people that, even if they can't describe everything about your product, they can describe overarching things, options, giving the consumer back the power, and how they're practicing, or participating in the finance world. We have that option now, and it's refreshing to hear somebody like you, who's working on something that's a little bit less foreign to most people, instead of just non-insured, on your own keys. So it's a good step into that space.
It's one of the things that's, I think, typical with, like, early adoption, like new technologies. We create almost like a religious type movement around it, partly to protect the idea, partly to exchange ideas as like as a community. And it doesn't necessarily translate so well to, like, normal people, to normies, right? I mean, but for them, you need to talk about the benefits. And so that's why I think the blockchain center is like amazing with its, like, that leads to adoption. And yeah, you and I all day long talk to people at, like, whatever, Chainlink or whatever, and everybody's just talking about the details. But then when you go do talk to, like, whatever, the guy you buy groceries from, or Joe the plumber, I mean, they're not so familiar with it. And that, to go back to your first point about, we're based in Switzerland, but it's really intended to be a global company. Like a lot of one of the amazing things about blockchain is that, like Aave, like, where are they based? Like Stani's from Finland. I think they have an office in, like, London, but, like, users are global, right? I mean, it's like us, like, issuing the equity tokens. I'm really excited because we have, like, a really global community. Like, I get DMs from people that are, like, in Eastern Europe or South America that are like, I hate going to my bank. My bank, like, it doesn't, it sucks so much out of the economy, and, like, I just wish I had the opportunity. Like, I'm really excited about, you offering like retail savings deposit accounts like on chain or in fiat like in Switzerland that I can actually access. And so that's really the goal. What we do in the United States, like obviously, like, love the United States. It's such an incredible country and we're excited to like do something in the US. It's just our model is a tech model. It's like, it's like Apple. Like they're not in every single country, right? They have their servers somewhere, based in like California, and people come to them. So our idea is not to replicate the old banking model where we go into every jurisdiction and have to get a banking license, which takes like, years, right? So our model is very much like a blockchain open model, and it makes a real difference to people's lives. Like, even our chief developer Tatiana, she lives in Belarus, which is like for you and me, like, you live in like pretty normal countries, the banks aren't that bad, whatever. But a lot of countries in the world, like Belarus, I mean, are just not that pleasant. Like it makes a real difference to people to have like, control of their own money. I mean, not influenced by the government. So it's part of the education process, which Blockchain Center does really well, right? I mean, but the average person, like Joe the plumber, he's probably not going to be really that interested in elliptical curve, cryptography. He's going to be a little bit more interested in like, hey, I control my money. It's like free speech. Like I can do what I want with it. And you know what? I mean, for us, it's like, hey, if I can have 3% and it's insured and you've got a credit card and I can like control it myself from my phone, that's a revolutionary offer to like many normal people. I think that's where we are going to see incredible adoption. I think mass adoption is coming. I think starting in 2021, like you're just going to see like a huge increase in the awareness of what blockchain is. The same as like you got in, it's like that S curve, like a Fisher Pry adoption curve that you saw with the internet. Like one day it's like it seems like only a few of us, and then in the future you're going to be like everybody's just using it, even if it's just kind of like boring, like you say, like invisible, the back end. Like nobody thinks of like streaming packets on the transport layer of the internet. They just think of watching Netflix, right? And I think that's where we're getting to.
100%, couldn't agree more. And this is something I really would like to ask you about as well. I think it's important for a lot of people that are, either looking at your company as far as, hey, look, I want to pick up, a couple of your tokens or whatever it is. What is like a go to market? What is like a marketing perspective? What do you guys, if you can talk about it, that's great. If not, like, do you have some, I know you guys probably have a very comprehensive strategy as far as like what you're looking to do, but is there any kind of taste like, hey, look, we're going to be doing this different. This is how we're going to outreach. Is there some kind of different type of plan? How are you going to really, other than pitching the benefits, like what does it look like for you guys to get these people, really motivated and compelled to get into the blockchain space, other than, hey, look, we're tech, we're innovation, we're everywhere, we don't have to go through all this licensing, you have all these benefits. Like, if that wasn't enough, which I'm sure it is, but what's is it like, hey, look, we're going to do a growth marketing strategy, we're going like this, or anything you could maybe throw on that, I'm sure would be pretty awesome for everybody.
Sure. Well, we've started with the institutions here in Switzerland, and you know what, you can go and explain like the background, the blockchain, the whole tech stack, but users are in finance. Users are motivated by risk and return, and so like
Okay.
3% insured. Like I used to go into these meetings and say, we're developing this company. It's built on blockchain. I'd get into all the details of the insurance. And finally, my friend and business partner, who's got a doctorate in engineering, who usually gets into all these details. He's like, stop it. It's like 3%. It's insured. How much do you want? He's like, that's the strategy. So, what we've done is like one of the reasons why we issued our shares in tokenized form was to help build, communities. So we're really helping, we're really trying to help people understand that blockchain equals a better deal for people in terms of finance. And so that is, that's part of the marketing. We're releasing our product roadmap soon. You can see the look and feel of what it's going to look like as an individual user. That's coming up really soon. We did it in an interesting way, how we got our tokens out. Like we're really big believers in decentralization. So our company itself is not as decentralized as we'd like, because somebody's got to organize insurance, somebody's got to organize we're deeply involved in the real world side of things, and that just can't be automated at this stage, right? So, but that's where we're going to. We've moved rights to a voting contract. We're now listed on Uniswap, which I think is just an amazing, protocol. So yeah, so but before we went to Uniswap, we went to 2 other exchanges, Dodo and Balancer. And what it helped us do is it helped us get out many more tokens, like equity shares in the company, at a lower price to try and develop this community. And the community is our marketing tool. So in part, we distributed 630,000 tokens at an average price of $3 a token. And had we done that on Uniswap with its AMM curve, we would have distributed half that amount at about $40 a token. So we're excited. It's literally just starting. Like we've literally just issued. We went to Uniswap yesterday. So
Wow.
yeah, so we've already got I've got like a ton of DMs that I'm trying to work through. People in Brazil, people in Thailand. I mean, from a lot of places that have said like, hey, look, I really passionately believe in what you're doing. Like, how can I help get the word out that like a blockchain-based bank alternative is just going to be a better deal for people? So you're hearing it in the very earliest days.
Absolutely. I definitely want to give you a final couple minutes. I think we're coming to the end here. I think we have like 4 minutes left to sum up some stuff. We did have a question from the audience. I see Gockstein in here, but the one question that seems to be overriding in everybody's minds right now is, why are you so low on wine? But it was a joke on the bag thing. But
I'm trying to drink. I'm keeping myself like whatever in good spirits. As this lockdown.
Yeah, just take it away. Take as much time as you need here. We're ready on the next front here, but I'd love for you to close out, Robert. It's been a pleasure, speaking with you. And one more question before we'll touch on that, because we do have a little bit of time. What sets you apart from the thousands of other DeFi projects? That's a question from the audience.
Well, it's a good question, and one is that we're regulated, we're based in Switzerland, and we're a bridge between the traditional space and the crypto space. So, our tokens are real equity tokens. They're not some utility token. We're the first technology challenger ever, in our view. Like, not Apple, not Google. We're the first, built on blockchain, to challenge core deposit banking, and it's just an enormous market. It's like just over $60 trillion. And it's only recently been possible because of blockchain that anybody can challenge banks. And so our model is matched funding, insurance, and blockchain technology. And we think that the end result for users is that helps them make their money work harder for them with much higher interest rates than they're going to get in the bank. And it's really safe. It's 100% insured.
That sounds much, very sufficient, given the current DeFi landscape. There's a lot of, for every one token that's reputable, there's about 1 million that, Pickle.finance or whatever the hell it might be. I know Gockstein starts talking about grocery items, but I think you succinctly said it. So I'll give you the last minute here. It's been a pleasure having you on, but I'm going to let you take over. If there's anything else, where to follow you, what people should do, everything like that, I'm going to hand it over to you. Take as much time as you need.
Yeah, great. Well, you know what? We built this starting for ourselves, and we built it for the right reasons. We didn't think of building it into a company. It's not from a hackathon. It's basically because we're trying to solve a real world problem, which is low savings rates. And it can only really be solved by blockchain. So it's a, it's a global opportunity, whether you're in Buffalo or whether you're in Geneva or Miami or someplace in Latin America. We really think it's something that'll change people's lives. So you can, we're launching retail next year. We've got our equity tokens available on Uniswap, and the ticker, so to speak, is WCRES, WCRES. And you can find us at defi.crescofin.ch. And we hope in the future that people will just adopt it and use the product.
Yeah, and Robert, I appreciate you coming on. I think it was a little bit more short notice, but we're very pleased to have you on. I got a lot of info out of in a different perspective on it. I thought all bankers were horrible, and the whole thing, but it seems as though maybe my presupposition was incorrect. And I'm just kidding, obviously, but I'm just saying, like, I think in crypto we think bankers, but there are people innovating in the space like yourself that I think are taking a responsible approach to this new landscape, and it's really refreshing and exciting. I'm sure this is not going to be the last conversation we have, even online or offline. I'd love to invite you back for something else we do. I'm sure there'll be an opportunity for that, and I just wanted to say personally thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure to chat with you. I think what Blockchain Center is doing is really indispensable. I mean, the whole space will grow based on adoption, and for that, you just need to get messages out. You need to educate people. So, I'm really delighted to have been here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Robert.